Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast, where we discuss what's happening in the cryptosphere and trading on Earth as it is in heaven. Buckle up and huddle on while we dive in and get weird. Here are your hosts, Joshua and Kim. Hey.
Hello.
Hey, so it's Monday today. I would like to say we had a wild weekend of trading and markets, but I don't know that that's actually the truth.
I suppose wild depends on how you define wild, or if your favorite color is red.
That's a very good point, Joshua. Way to always really have a good outlook on things.
Right.
Okay,
the
so we
Bears
say
have
this.
certainly been happy.
That's true. That's true. We say this. Today we want to talk about a lot of Bitcoin because, well, to be quite honest, I have a lot of love for Bitcoin. We've talked about this before. I personally think it's the gold standard of crypto. And it's really been, I think it's something to talk about. We have some milestones that have been hit this week and just kind of things to look at with what's going on with Bitcoin. So today, where's Bitcoin?
Currently 41,400.
Okay. We were talking about this earlier. And 41 seems to be quite the threshold for Bitcoin. Yeah. So we're hoping that it won't go down any further.
It seems, I mean, if you look back over like a year chart, 41,000 seems to be a spot that it has held 5 or 6 different times. Even just looking at like the 24-hour chart, it drops down below, but it always bounces right back to that point. And so it seems to be a very strong point of a very strong floor for Bitcoin to sit on. And so I guess what I'm really looking for personally is, can it continue to hold that, or does it drop down below? Because we were also discussing, if you look at the year chart or past chart, if it doesn't hold that 41 mark, the next point that it has stopped previously has been 30. And that's a pretty significant decrease.
I mean, that's 25% from where we are now. Yeah. From all-time high, that's a drop of more than 50%.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's hope that it can hold out for 41.
I think it can.
I think it can too. And here's some good news. So this is the part when we're going to get weird. Okay, so you know that we are people who engage in heaven, and so we go to the Father, Yahweh, and Yeshua, but it's usually Yahweh who's there really guiding us in this stuff with cryptocurrencies. And funny story, we are the Market Mystics. And before this meeting, we're like, hey, maybe we should engage about this and ask the Father what's going on before we do the podcast. Wouldn't that be novel? Like, how brilliant would this be if we actually asked him before we started talking about it?
Right. Maybe we should actually do what our name implies.
I mean, why? Just kidding. Okay, so we did. And when we did this was cool because we do this kind of individually. Just know this about our relationship. So we're very adamant about people having their own relationships, garnering that, building the intimacy, and really stepping into their own destinies, right? So when we say that we engage together, we say, hey, let's seek the Father. And then individually we're seeking him. And then we talk about what we received or heard or saw or perceived or whatever it may be.
Right.
When we did this today, we kind of saw the same thing. It was
which is always
it
reassuring.
is so reassuring because when they're like way far off, there's some wrestling that might have to happen.
Right.
Yeah. But today, um, we were both shown Bitcoin. We were, and to be clear, again, in the heavenlies, Bitcoin is a being. And to be quite honest, he is the gold standard there. He very much represents gold, and
It's
he
very also partnered with the bean gold.
this is true. Um, and in the beginning, when we first started engaging with the cryptocurrencies and stuff, we also encountered Ethereum, who was there and being trained by silver. So it was like Bitcoin is represented with gold. Ethereum was represented with silver, but we've seen some deviation from that. And um, though it wasn't the original plan that the father had laid out, Ethereum's kind of not pulling his weight anymore, I would say. So Bitcoin's had to pick up that slack. Remember, I told you this was going to get weird, but it's getting weird. So Bitcoin's having to pick up the slack and really kind of, it's almost like he's the lead horse in pulling this carriage or something. I don't know how else to say that. But when I saw Bitcoin today, I saw that he was crouched way down, almost like he was on starting blocks of a race. And then I saw, no, he isn't. He was holding this big barbell with really big weights on it. And I saw he was getting ready to bounce up and lift those weights. And when I saw him do that, I saw him break through this threshold, which I saw to be the all-time high in the world, and really start moving forward. But it's like he's in intensive training. And it is, the impression that I got was that it is to be expected that he is going to dip way low like this, and then he's going to spring forward and continue moving forward. But it's all in this process of gaining strength and being that leader that he is.
Right. And that's typically, one of the things that we discussed after we engaged was how it's very healthy to have this kind of time of like springboarding off and then pulling back. If you think about it in like weightlifting, which was the picture you saw, you don't just instantly jump to your maximum weight. You slowly build up to it, and the more that you build up to it, the more that your maximum is increased. Even if you're never actually lifting your maximum, building that base really helps long term. And so these times of Bitcoin jumping and pulling back are so important in his training and foundation for him to be able to withstand the higher pressures that you experience at the higher numbers. And if it's going to hit 100,000 or 300,000, as some people have surmised, then it has to be trained to be able to support that.
Right. Agreed. So that's kind of what we saw. Josh, do you want to expound any more on what you saw or experienced?
Sure. Yeah. So I experienced something very similar where I saw the Beam Bitcoin holding up a platter that essentially represented the whole crypto market. And it seemed as if he was holding this platform that was designed for 2 or 3 or 4 things to hold it with him, but he had been the only one holding it. And so it was very similar kind of weightlifting type picture, and just a time of training and needing resources and support. And I would love to see other things come alongside and help. But if it doesn't, I still think that the plan has to move forward.
Mhm.
And I think that that's how heaven works all the time is humans, spiritual beings, whatever it may be, are given an opportunity to accomplish something. And they may choose to partner with that and do it, but they may choose not to,
Right.
which is sort of what we've seen with Ethereum is it's sort of chosen not to participate in its original design. And I don't know how to explain that in a natural point of view, but that's what we've seen in the heavens. But the overall plan still has to go on. So even
Mhm.
if the other beings that were meant to participate in holding the platform of cryptocurrency aren't there, that plan still is going to go through. It may be slower. It will have to adjust to some point. I mean, like we've seen Bitcoin being the only one holding it. Bitcoin
Mhm.
dominance is, I mean, not at an all-time high, but it's still 40% of, if you look at a Bitcoin dominance chart, it's at 40 to 41% right now.
It
That's
is carrying the market.
It's carrying the market. And whether or not it should be fully or not, it is. And, if it is, I want to see it resourced and trained and build that foundation so that it can launch to higher highs.
Yes. Agreed. Okay.
And
So
I think what we will see, we'd sort of discussed, maybe Bitcoin jumping from it's a 41 or so to upper 70s, 80s when it does jump, and then possibly kind of coming back into this pullback. I think when you see that, I don't think that it's a pullback back to 40. I
yeah.
think it's, a 60 or a 70. I think we're building this foundation so that when we increase, we pull back, we increase, we pull back. And in the markets, I mean, the whole time that I've been trading stock markets or crypto markets, that is the sign of a healthy bull run.
Hmm.
It isn't these straight up peaks that we see in a lot of times in crypto because that's not sustainable. And
Right.
I think we've seen that not be sustainable. And so I think you have to have these times of growth and these times of pullbacks in order to really support a a stable a stable uptrend.
Yeah. I think you're right. And, you know, some of the stuff that we can look at over the past year. So, by the way, last week was Bitcoin's birthday, 13th birthday. So,
Happy birthday,
finally,
Bitcoin.
in the Jewish culture, Bitcoin is now an adult, right?
Right.
Um, so, in the last year, though, I mean, let's just look back from the last Bitcoin birthday. We've seen all kinds of huge milestones
Right.
happen, right? So in February, Bitcoin hit over $1 trillion in its market cap, which is huge, right? May, we saw some influence from some outside sources, which is also a really interesting thing. I'm sure someday we'll talk about it a little more in depth. But in May, we saw Bitcoin go from 58,000 for their price and drop down to 38 within a month. And speculatively, I would say it was all due to Elon Musk tweeting
Mm,
that it was consuming too much power, and until it was sustainable, he's not having anything to do with it anymore, or not
right.
accepting it for Tesla payments. I think that's really what it was.
Sure.
But it felt more significant than that. I think the whole
Right.
market goes, oh my gosh, Elon says Bitcoin isn't anything. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's how
Right.
people reacted.
Yeah.
Right. And that was a huge move. Like, that dip, almost 60 to almost 40, that's 33% dip in less than 30 days.
Mm.
That's a big move, whether up or down. What else happened in 2021? In June, that was when El Salvador, which I think is also pretty awesome. It was the month after this big dip happened after that tweet from Elon. El
Yeah.
Salvador's president announced that they were going to start accepting it as legal tender.
What's pretty interesting is that didn't just happen in a whim. I'm sure that
Right.
this was something they'd been planning and thinking about and looking at. And I'm sure they weren't upset about that dip coming in.
That's true.
You know, they were, I think when they did it, I, oh man, I can't remember exactly how much they bought, but it was like 100 Bitcoin or something like that. I think was their first purchase. I don't quote me on that. I can't remember the exact number, but it was a fairly large amount that they purchased for their first purchase. And so I'm sure that they didn't necessarily hate that the
Hate that
price.
dip.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What I love about it is, okay, so they made this big move, which could have been just a big publicity thing, like getting El Salvador in people's mouths and being talked about. And yeah, we'll accept Bitcoin, except then they doubled down. In
Mm.
October, they announced that they're building what they're calling a Bitcoin city. And it is in this town that is in like by their volcano. And they're using the energy from the volcano to power Bitcoin mining there. So they're not just using it as legal tender, they're also, the government is
Investing.
investing
Yeah.
into mining Bitcoin. Like they're serious about this. And I think it's huge. I think that is groundbreaking. I don't know.
I mean, it's also pretty amazing because Elon's tweet was about power consumption
Right.
being from renewable energy.
Mm-hmm.
And you can argue, and some have. I know I just recently read an article where some people from a magazine wrote Elon a letter explaining how, in their point of view, Bitcoin is already mined 56% from renewable energy, and making the same argument that the majority of America's power, I think it was like only 20% of it comes from renewable energy. And so all the Teslas that are sold being charged at people's homes are charged not on renewable energy. And
Mm.
so they found it a little bit hypocritical, I guess, of him to complain about one thing while essentially doing the exact same thing with his own company.
Mm.
And so this thing with El Salvador, using volcanic power, and I think it's only going to help as we see more and more people looking. I mean, we really need, I believe, alternative energy sources. And I think using these things that we've not really explored before. I mean, maybe it's existed for a while. I've not really heard of people using volcanic energy to do much of
Right.
anything.
Right.
And so now to see that partnered with Bitcoin, I think is pretty amazing.
I do too. Absolutely. And then, okay, so that was October that El Salvador really like put this out there, the whole Bitcoin city, the whole volcanic power source and everything. Then November 10th, we see Bitcoin hit its all-time high, which was just over $69,000.
Yeah.
Right. So this is just in the last year. And it's interesting to me now because we're just talking about kind of this floor in the market that we're seeing. So we're hoping 41 is the floor. We're staying at this kind of threshold. But a year ago, 41 was like the high, right? 1 year ago, people would be jumping up and down, hip hip hooray, Bitcoin has hit 41. feeling like they're rolling in the dough, right?
Right.
Whereas today we're like, oh, it's so far down. I don't know what's going on with the markets. But like you said, these deviations and like hitting these new floors, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So a year from now, what are we going to be talking about as the new floor? Is it going to be $80,000? Is it going to be $120,000? I don't know. Are we going to look back at this time and be like, man, I wish we would have bought that dip? You know
Yes.
what I mean?
I mean, just December of 2020 was like 18,000.
Right.
Crazy. And it's constantly, I mean, so December 2020 to December 2021, 18,000 to 48,000. Like that's a very significant 12-month increase.
Absolutely.
And I don't see any reason why we won't experience something similar from December 2021 to December 2022.
I would say I 100% expect it, especially given what we were just shown today by the Lord.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
right.
Where Bitcoin is crouching down and getting in this stance to be able to really push forward. I think absolutely that's the kind of movement we're going to continue to see. And honestly, I have another thing that I thought was really cool. I read this week. It was in Reuters. And there's a hypothesis that was derived from current market stats. I can't even read, you guys. Okay. With Bitcoin holding 20% share of the store of value market. This means that if Bitcoin can grow to over $100,000 within the next 5 years, which, as you know, we would probably expect, honestly, in the next year,
Mm,
probably, that it can surpass gold in the store of value market capitalization. So Bitcoin could potentially overtake gold in all of the markets, which is just mind blowing to me. Yet another connection with gold in the world after what we see with the Lord, is that he's so closely connected to gold,
mm,
right? He's being trained by gold. This is why you hear us say things like, "Oh, Bitcoin's the gold standard of,"
mm,
and the fun thing is, so we've been saying this for a while, probably well over a year, right?
mhm.
We've been
Yeah.
talking about this back and forth. And the fun thing for us is to read some of these newsletters that then does compare Bitcoin to gold,
Right.
and they'll make the connections too. And I love seeing that because it's not just the people who are like tuned in and super focused on the Father that are seeing this. Like this is being revealed to
Mm,
people, whether they're looking to who the source is coming from or not. You know what I mean? This is wild. And I love seeing that stuff.
yeah. It's very, I mean, we talk about this a lot about the connectivity of people.
Mm,
And, whether you explain it through quantum entanglement or, there's lots of different buzzwords that can be used to describe the oneness in humanity. But I think it's so amazing to see when you go, just like we were discussing today before we engaged, Kim and I go to the Father and we see something very, very similar. That's very encouraging. But then when you go and then you start seeing it pop up everywhere, it's like, yeah, that was right. And you start seeing heaven's hand
mm,
in Earth's realm way more than you expect to sometimes.
right. Right. I think it's, I think that's amazing. I also think that in a time where socially, politically, culturally, everyone's being divided so much over politics and big topics like a pandemic and treatment for a pandemic and those kinds of things that have been so divisive.
Mm.
It's really encouraging to see things in the crypto world that is drawing people together.
Right.
And it really doesn't matter background. And again, I think this is one of the things I love so much about cryptocurrency and really this new idea of a system of currency as opposed to this government run currency is how it's drawing people together, how it's unifying people. I think we talked about before, we were at a restaurant one time and talked to the waiter about cryptocurrency. And then we talked to the bartender. And then it was just, it's a whole
Mhm.
thing. And people you wouldn't normally connect with. Like these are some things that are unifying people. It's
Yeah,
bringing them together. I love it.
it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the unity surrounding crypto, or the community is maybe a better word, surrounding crypto is just one of my favorite things about it.
Agreed. And you know what? People aren't like competing with one another.
Right.
People are spurring each other on. This
Right.
isn't a competition thing. This is oh yeah, I hope you do well. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
you win 100x. That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I love that.
Hmm.
Actually, I think that's the Father's heart too in this. I think
Yeah.
honestly, he does desire for this to draw people closer to one another and ultimately to him too.
Mhm. I
And
would
it's
agree.
it's just a cool tool that's being used, and I like seeing it unfold.
For
Yeah,
sure.
cool. Okay, well, I think that's about all we have today. However, I learned a new crypto phrase term this
Yes.
week. And so I'm just going to leave you with this. It's WAGMI or WAGMI, WAGMI. And it means we all going to make it. We good.
We good, guys.
All
Log
right.
me it is.
All right. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening. Join us every Monday and Thursday as we discuss trading on earth as it is in heaven. If you want to connect further, follow us on social media at market.mystics for Instagram and TikTok, and search for Market Mystics on YouTube and Facebook. If you still need more, follow the link on Facebook to book a coaching appointment. Until next time, see ya.